So if you've spent any amount of time working on a musical instrument or really just learning anything in general, I guess, you probably know that practicing is a really essential thing in getting better at something. Practicing is something super crucial as a musician. However, a lot of the times we don't really know exactly what to work on. So let's find out. Hey, what's going on, everyone? This is Nick. If you're new here, I'm a Brooklyn-based musician, and today we're going to be talking about how to figure out what to practice. So I'm going to go through these 5 things that have helped me in my practice and helped me become a better musician. I recommend sticking around to the end to get all of the tips because they're all going to be really valuable, but let's start with tip number 1. So the first thing I have is consistency is key. It's better to practice every day for like an hour a day or so, or whatever amount of time you can allocate to that, rather than pick up your instrument once a week and play for like a 6-hour chunk. First of all, depending on your skill level, it'll be really hard to actually endure the whole 6-hour chunk. And second of all, if you're not touching the instruments often, it's going to be more foreign to you. It's going to be really hard to develop muscle memory or any type of calluses if you're playing a string instrument or any kind of like things like that will help you with your instrument. So really try to be consistent about your practice every day or at least 4 times a week, and just basically get yourself acquainted with the instrument. Try to play it as often as you possibly can. My second tip would be to have really focused practice sessions. When you're practicing, if you're not focused or you're not really thinking about these things, you're going to kind of be making mistakes a lot, and that's not really conducive to a practice environment. I'm going to talk a little bit more about mistakes later on, but it's really good to have a focused practice session better than an unfocused practice session. If I practice for an hour with a really focused practice session versus 6 hours of a really unfocused practice session, I'm not really going to get much out of the 6-hour session because I'm sort of doing like this mindless work. But with focused practice, you're really getting stuff done and you're really kind of building your craft. But if you have a really focused practice session, you're going to learn more in an hour than you would in 6. At some point, I heard the great guitarist Rotem Sivan talk about how it's good to have a few specific topics and alternate in like 5, 10, 15-minute chunks rather than just work on the same thing for an hour because of the way our attention spans work. I've tried that and had great success with that. I definitely recommend that. My third tip would be to do slow and deliberate practice. At some point, I took a lesson with the great Boston pianist Bert Seeger, and basically the first thing he told me was, whenever we do anything, we're really practicing. Our brains make these neurological connections whenever we're working on anything. So for example, if we're procrastinating, our brain is getting better at the action of procrastinating. So when we're practicing, and this points back to the previous point of focus practice, it's really good to try to minimize the mistakes, because when we make mistakes, we're learning the mistakes. And we're all human beings, it's impossible to avoid playing mistakes, but we can sort of control the environments a little by slowing things down to the point where our minds can process what we're playing, and our hands as well. This will also contribute to our muscle memory, and in general, it's a lot easier to slow something down and then speed it up later than rather start fast and then go back down. Using a metronome could really help with this because it keeps us really consistent, so I would definitely recommend doing that. My fourth piece of advice would be to practice what you're weak on. Now, this is something that I see kind of relatively often, and it's really the distinction between playing and practicing. When we're practicing, we're really trying to get better at the craft. We're really trying to either learn something new, fix some of the stuff that we did before, but generally we're trying to get better. While you do get better while you're playing, and playing is definitely an important skill, and I've learned a lot, especially from playing live, it's really important to have designated practice sessions to work on the physicality act of it and work on our ears and work on our muscles. It's really easy to play something that you know well, and it's really good because we all have some sort of ego that we have to fulfill, but that's not always what's best for our practice sessions. So what I would recommend is taking a look at what you're weak at, thinking about what other players can play that you might not be able to play, and really kind of diagnose yourself. It's kind of hard to do this because, you know, we all like to think of ourselves as good, I think, but really dive in and find out what the weak points are and diagnose it and fix it. The same thing you would do if you go to the doctor because you have like a cold or something, and at the end you're sort of prescribed something to fix it. The same thing that we want to do when we're playing, we want to basically prescribe the problem and fix it. And if you're unsure about exactly what you're weak at or what your weaknesses are, my last point will be a great help for you. My 5th point is to record yourself when you're playing and practicing. So when we're playing a musical instrument, there's tons of things that are going on in our head. There's a lot of things we have to think about. There's the time, there's rhythm, there's melody, there's pitch, there's intonation. There's all these sorts of things. There's what scale do I play? There's all these sort of things that are going around in our head while we're playing, and it's really hard to be sort of the objective listener and really diagnose what we're playing. With the modern technology, we have a phone in our pockets all the time. We have a voice note recorder, we have a camera thing. So we can actually record video and look at our technique, record voice notes, and listen back to how we actually sound. A lot of times this is really frustrating and gets really sad. I've had students do this and they're like, yeah, I listened to what I did and I really hated it. So then from there you have the answer. If you know exactly what you don't like about your playing, you can address that. You can work on certain things to get a little better at that. And if you're watching this video and you're thinking, oh man, I really want to do all these things, but I don't really have that much time to practice, check out this other video I made on how to have an effective practice session in 1 hour. Essentially, I go through how to sort of schedule out a practice session when you don't have that much time in order to get a very efficient practice session and get all the things you want done. So that's about all I have for you today. If you've enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe. And if you've made it this far to the end, thank you so much for watching. I hope to see you next video, and take care.